Hello, folks. Welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and I have another great show planned for us. We're going to be looking at very bizarre encounters. But first, while we wait for people to gather in the chat, oh, by the way, these very bizarre encounters are going to be us going over various encounters with cryptids, encounters with cryptids and other strange goings on in the world. Like that. We're also going to be looking at some stories we've looked at before, but we're going to be looking at them again we're just going to learn more information about stuff, and it's going to be great. But while we wait for people to gather in the chat, let's look at this. Here's the cover for my Scumdogs comic book, my Scumdogs graphic novel. The Scumdogs, as I've explained before, is a parody of cartoons we all know and love and stuff. It's basically, the Scumdogs themselves are supervillains who want to rule the world. They were former pro athletes, superhumanly powerful monsters who were pro athletes, because in the future there was such a thing known as the Scumdogs sports. This is the story of my graphic novel, by the way. And they're called Scum and Dogs because they traded in their humanity for superpowers and monstrous forms, because that's how you compete in the Scumdogs sports. They're basically sporting events held with superhumanly powerful monsters. Either through science or through some other means, they become superhumanly powerful monsters and stuff. Creatures with such huge powers, it's unbelievable. But the thing is, they're pro athletes, so they're idiots. Well, they're not exactly the brightest guys around, and not exactly the nicest guys either, because they traded in their humanity. They traded in their humanity for superpowers. Now, my main characters are, as you can see, this cover has most of the characters that will be appearing in it on the cover. But the main characters are Deathmug and Buick Starpoon. Deathmug and Buick Starpoon. Deathmug is the purple guy with the middle mask, while Buick Starpoon is the guy with the pink pompadour hair. Deathmug is a parody of various villains from 80s cartoons. Well, if you look at his face, he's got a metal mask he's got a metal mask like Cobra Commander from G.I. Joe, as well as he's gold. He's got gold on him like Serpentor from G.I. Joe. And of course he's purple like the Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Deathmug is an overbearing, arrogant former pro athlete that when he was banned from sports decided to take over the world because, he's that arrogant and that overblown and bearing. So he decided, if they're going to treat me like that, I'm going to take over this world. And his arch enemy is Buick Starpoon, the guy with the pink pompadour hair, who is basically a parody of Duke from G.I. Joe. He's a G.I. Joe parody. In fact, all of the members in his team in the Space Forces are G.I. Joe parodies. He's basically an overblown, he's also a parody of the space hero kind of character as well, like Buzz Lightyear or Buck Rogers, those kinds of heroes, or the guy, that Warlord of Mars, those kinds of characters, the space hero type of characters who captain a starship, and basically John Carter of Mars. Yeah, he's a parody of those kinds of characters, as well as Buck Rogers. He's as well as being a G.I. Joe parody. And like him and his team, the Space Forces, all have military specialties. His military specialty is that he's a captain. But he's also an arrogant, overblown moron who's a military, he's one of those military morons. But he's also incredibly arrogant. So he thinks everything he does is right. So basically him and Deathmug are instant enemies because their egos basically clash so much that they eventually try to beat each other to the ground. Well, you get the idea. Now, the other members of Buick Starpoon's team, this guy over here with the mohawk, his name, you see him over there? His name is Roadhog. His military specialty is that he's an army guy. He was a former he was a former major in the army before he transferred over to the Space Forces, and so he became another member of Buick Starpoon's team, and he's he is one of your gung-ho kind of type of characters who blasts everything inside and just legitimately destroys whatever he gets around, basically to get and decimate the enemy while screaming and stuff like that. Over here we have this bald guy with a gun. He's another member of Buick Starpoon's team. His name is Beach Pounder. His military specialty is that he's a Marine. He is more calculating and cautious, but he's also a total moron. He generally looks at his enemies, finds their weaknesses, and basically screws up. Or rather, he takes his enemies out. But he's also another military moron. But he does whatever he's told by Buick Starpoon, and doesn't seem to realize that Buick Starpoon is an idiot. So yeah, he's probably a bigger idiot than Buick Starpoon. Now, this guy back here in that vehicle, firing off his weapons at the scumdogs, the guy in the red uniform. By the way, everyone in a similar uniform to Buick Starpoon is all part of his team of Space Forces. As I said, over here, this guy in the vehicle, this guy in the red uniform, firing off his weapons off at the scumdogs. His name is Blast Tank. His military specialty is that he's a heavy vehicle specialist. Otherwise known as a tanker, and you're going to love these guys when you read about them in my graphic novel. This is, by the way, this cover is one of 3 different variant covers, but you'll be able to back when my Indiegogo goes live. Over here, we have Girl Friday. She is another member of the Wild Rangers. The Wild Rangers is the name of Buick Starpoon's team in the Space Forces. Girl Friday is, well, the second in command man to Buick Starpoon. She was put on the Wild Rangers by her superiors in the Space Forces because while the Wild Rangers fight the scumdogs to save the universe, they're just highly destructive idiots who just do such damage to the surrounding area that, well, generally they wanted to put someone on the team who could basically steer them away from doing such damage. So Girl Friday was put on the Wild Rangers, and she hates Buick Starpoon. She hates him because she feels like her career in the military is over because she's basically now she's now a babysitter. Now we're going to look at Death Mug's henchmen. Because in all 80s cartoons, the main villain, his henchmen, his underlings, they'd be total idiots. Yeah, well, these are Death Mug's idiots. The blue guy with the top hat is Murder Mouth, and the pink guy down here is Sloppy. There are a couple of idiots that destroy everything they touch. They're a parody of every henchman from an 80s cartoon. You know, like the Decepticons or the underlings in Cobra from G.I. Joe, how they'd be idiots and never be able to beat the Joes. Well, these are or the Decepticons who basically screw up and destroy stuff. These are Death Mug's idiots. And they're going to be fun when you read them in my graphic novel. Oh, by the way, folks, hit that like button for me, as well as please go share this video on social media. In fact, hit that bell for me, as well as hit the part where it will give you all future notifications, so you all can come to my future live streams. Over here now, we're going to be looking at Hair Metal Doctor. Here's Hair Metal Doctor. Hair Metal Doctor is a parody. Well, here's Hair Metal Doctor. He's a parody of Dr. Mindbender from G.I. Joe, a mad scientist. But my mad scientist here has been crossed over with a hair metal musician because I thought that'd be awesome to have as a villain. A mad scientist, hair metal musician. He thinks of all the mad gadgets and machines the scumdogs use to try and take over the world. He's he rocks out. He's very intelligent, but he also does it while rocking out. He basically says, "Now to complete this scientific experiment," but while singing out, he sounds like Van Halen, basically making scientific observations while screaming like a maniac, or maybe what's his name? Like that, you get Van Halen. Alice Cooper. Yeah, sounds like Alice Cooper basically saying scientific things while also basically being who he is. Here we have Miss Breasty Melons, who's basically a parody of the Baroness from G.I. Joe. But unlike the Baroness, she's a party girl. She only became a villain because she thought it'd be, she only became a villainess because she thought it'd be fun. She wanted to have a fun time, so she basically helps the scumdogs. that basically brings you up. These are my characters. You'll be able to back this graphic novel on Indiegogo, so look out for it when it goes live. All right, let me exit out of these. As I said we're going to be looking at various disasters. We're going to be looking at maybe Mothman stories and about how the Point Pleasant Bridge disaster, how that happened, as well as maybe looking at the Philadelphia experiment and how basically during it people saw the shadow man, well, shadow people. I looked at this a little earlier in the week, but I didn't think I did enough justice to it. So we're going to be looking at these encounters where these disasters basically also have something to do with aliens or paranormal things. So we're going to be looking at those tonight. You know, how basically what is about these situations that draw in these creatures as well. Maybe even like the rock apes from Vietnam. Generally there was a war going on in their area, so yeah, eventually people were going to encounter these weird creatures. But there's also encounters in Vietnam of Vietnam vets encountering alien spaceships. So maybe we'll look at that too tonight. That's if we have time. So let's go over to Indiegogo. Here's some new Indiegogos up. Here's this horror comic book. Doesn't look too bad. Here's some other books. Oh, Stomp 2, the comic book, is still in demand, so that's pretty good. We have GH057, double stars right there. Look at it before. Some of the artwork in these books look great. All of them look damn good. Now, there's Elvira, which has made $71,000. It's got 27 hours left, so that's good right there. It's made it's made 71,052 backers. Yeah. It's made $71,000. That is good. Yeah, it's very good. There's Krypton Origins, Gytron Origins comic book. Dragon Rage, Second Chance does make $4,071. Not bad. A lot of new books. Chaotic Flux 3 has made $5,656. That's also good. Rainbow the Brute has made $423,207. We haven't looked at that for a while. Before doing anything else, let's see if there are any new stretch goals announced. Updates 2. For 400,000, here's the reward. We are way past 400,000 now. Rainbow backers. Here's this awesome, fantastic. This campaign is picking up. When was this released? April 10th, so a little while ago. So it doesn't look like any new things have come up. Let's see, stretch goals. Well, Rainbow the Brute is basically, meet Rainbow the Brute, the last real man in fairyland. You can back this book for $25. Rainbow the Brute is a hard-fighting, hard-drinking fairy barbarian who battles the thunderclad men and maintains order under the rainbow. It isn't easy with unicorn pets, thumb-sucking apes, onion grove children requiring constant vigilance. But Rainbow's worst day ever happens when, after a series of honeysuckle shots, he quarrels with one of the Unbearables, a clan of very bad guys, and they steal something from him. They steal his sword from him. Not only that, but Paula Pocket, a former girlfriend whom he hasn't seen in 15 years, finds him to let him know that he has a son, and the boy needs a father. Mount up on Rainbow's grizzly stallion Nephilim for the adventure of a lifetime to retrieve his sword and perhaps along the way teach a young Shiro Pocket what it means to be a man. Looks pretty good. It's 38 pages long and looks great. But you can also back other variant covers for this book, as well as 2 other books. Cool Story Bro, Toxic Fairy Tales for Masculine Men for $25. Basically, it takes all old time story fairy tales and like that. Basically, gives them a toxically masculine agenda. Basically, you'll be looking at basically a bunch of hard line fairy tales with like Jack the Cookie guy, basically, a parody of what's the name of that cookie fairy tale character, basically reimagined as a hard fighting gun toting character like that. You also be seeing Bro White and the Seven Dwarfs, instead of Snow White, it's Bro White and the Seven Dwarfs. Basically, a guy living with seven dwarves like that and being cool. That looks like. You also get My Girthy Stallion as well for $25. It's basically a spin-off book starring Nephilim, a very hard-fighting My Girthy Stallion who kicks ass. That pretty much brings you up right here. So we looked at that. Let's see, any chats? By the way, hit that like button if you have not yet, folks. As I said earlier, we were going to look at more encounters. We're going to look at more from the Shadow People to the Philadelphia Experiment, Part 1. I'm going to cover how basically people encountered these weird creatures, as well as maybe go over the Vietnam thing where they encountered aliens. Mainly because I wanted to do a little more on this. As someone who writes books, gives lectures, makes articles, here and there I get a lot of feedback. For the most part, it comes via emails, phone calls, and Facebook messages from people who want to share their experiences, ask questions, or offer their opinions on the things I have written about. Occasionally, however, I'll find myself on the receiving end of a communication of several from someone claiming an insider-type background, a whistleblower. In other words, there have been a few occasions where my path has crossed with those of enigmatic characters whose background did indeed place them in the world of certain covert activities, all connected to UFOs in one way or another. This occurred most graphically when I was researching and writing the books Roswell UFO Conspiracy, On the Trail of the Sarcer Spies, Snatchers in the Desert, and Final Events. March 2nd, 17. Yeah, March 2nd. Happened again. In this case, it came in the form of an unknown phone call in the early afternoon. The elderly man on the other end of the line said that he had read my books, Men in Black and Women in Black, wanted to share something relevant revolved around, he said, around the Philadelphia Experiment in 1943 and the MIB. This was certainly new to one on me, and I thought I had heard it all. I clearly had not. Like me, he had no time for the teleportation or time travel-based scenarios. What he did believe, or rather claimed to know, was certainly just as controversial, perhaps even more so. He said that early in the 1980s, he was given the opportunity to read a particular batch of classified U.S. Navy files. If I read this before, folks, I'm sorry. I'm just going over this, plus the other stuff as well. Just hang with me here. You'll learn more about this and about how shadow people were encountered during the Philadelphia Experiment. To read a particular batch of classified U.S. Navy files that told the real story of the Philadelphia Experiment. He was extremely cagey. Verifiable facts, no surprise there, I have to say, but maintained that the experiment had a bearing on the information MIB and Women in Black. I asked in what and how. Well, I asked in what way. His reply was that the experiment, the precise nature of which he would not comment on, created what he called a shift. It was a shift that allowed those aboard the ship to see certain things that in normal state you and I would not be able to see, but which are not supposedly around us all the time. We're talking about the MIB, WIB, and even what have become popularly known in recent years as the Shadow People. MIB, huh? One-dimensional entities that are considered highly dangerous, so the tale went the stories of the crew members. There's more to this, what we're reading here and stuff. I read this before, but I'm going to go over this before we go over other information. Or becoming fused, yeah. The tale went, the stories of crew members vanishing or becoming fused in the middle of the ship were very wide off the mark. They were, I was assured, widely distorted. Accounts of the crew seeing not sailors, but encountering MIB and shadow people walking through the walls. Becoming, well... MIB, WIB, and shadow people walking through the walls, becoming invisible and then reappearing. It didn't take long, though, before the truth of the matter became a tale of vanishing and reappearing sailors. The man claimed even more controversially that this particular event at sea marked the first moment when the U.S. government became aware of the Men in Black phenomenon. The man stressed that he used the word aware for a very good reason. He wanted to make it clear that the government's awareness did not mean they fully understood the nature of the MIB-related phenomenon, and then he stressed yet again the awareness and understanding should not be confused. Yes, I got it. Geez. Interestingly, he also said that the stories of some of the crew going insane were absolutely true. He explained that this was caused by the strange ability of some of the men to randomly see the MIB and WB and the shadow people for up to at least several years later. True or not, I could not understand why people might well flip their collective lids under such circumstances. Yeah, I could. Yeah, where's some new information right here? I know I haven't read this before. so we are getting some new information we haven't served for. Imagine being innocently faced with ghoulish pale creatures in black swarming all around you all the time, in somewhat ethereal form, and your friends and family are completely oblivious to what's going on around them. That would surely be enough to send anyone completely off the rails. Creepiest of all, he said that when the creatures realized they could be seen by the sailors, they would respond by endlessly tormenting them. They would point their bony fingers at the men and grin in manic style. Others would dance around them in wild, crazed fashion while wailing and howling. It was a definitive bedlam in one form from which there was no escape. Whatever Adinus Macabre might say, minds were lost, destroyed, and never recovered. Having listened to all of that, I felt like I needed a drink. It was 3 o'clock p.m. on a weekday, too early for hard liquor with chilled Coca-Cola and ice. No, it was not, of course. The most logical explanation for all of this is that the source was a nut job. What if it was true? Now, let's read even more into this. There's even more information on this, so let's take a look at it, folks. This is, let's continue on from where we left off. Part 1 in this article began as follows. Part 1. As someone who writes books, gives lectures, and posts articles here and there, get a lot of feedback for the most part. It gives it via emails, phone calls, and Facebook messages from people who want to share their experiences, ask questions, or offer their opinions on the things I've written about. Occasionally, however, I'll find myself on the receiving end of communication from several for someone claiming insider type and background. We read this part before. My path across with those in Germanic characters. Yeah, Roswell. Conspiracy on the Trail. Yep. He lists his books again. They are the exact from part 1 of this article ends. Now it's time for part 2. As interesting as the most crazy story admittedly was, I quite naturally asked the man for something to back up his extraordinary claims. He told me to keep a lookout for something that would be arriving in a couple of days. The phone then clicked. He had hung up. I thought, how can something be coming to my apartment when he didn't even have my address? 2 days later, on March 4th, 2017, I found out apparently he had someone associated with him. I did have my address around noon. I went down to get the email, and I opened my apartment door and saw a yellow envelope sitting on my welcome mat. What was particularly odd about this envelope was its complete lack of stamps or address. The entire envelope was blank. It wasn't even sealed. The flap had just been pushed aside. The envelope, I looked around and didn't see any unfamiliar faces wandering around. That was not surprising. It could only have been placed there after some time after I just returned to the apartment, which was around 10 o'clock p.m. the previous night. After I had helped a friend haul a new recliner into his second-floor apartment 1 block down from mine. Logically, though, I figured it was probably delivered in the early hours of the morning, when there would have been hardly anyone awake or in a position to see the person who made the stealthy delivery. Okay, that is very weird, too. Okay, I don't know who this guy is that sent him the stuff, but he sounds almost truly bizarre. I mean, he might be making up stories here. I think he did get a letter, but he might be embellishing the facts a bit here, basically probably to protect the guy who actually sent it. Because the guy who sent it almost sounds like he has supernatural powers himself. So I took the envelope inside and sat down on the couch. I opened it and could see what looked like an old book. That's exactly what it was. Took it out. What I was holding in my hand was the original 1950 edition book published on the Bureau of Ships, U.S. Navy Department. His title was Microwave Techniques. It had been prepared for Radiation Laboratory of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. On the acknowledgement page, it said Microwave Technologies, a Bureau of Ships edition of the report T13 Microwave Technique as of May 1943, issued by the Radiation Laboratory. It was signed by D.H. Clark, Admiral, U.S. Navy Chief, Bureau of Ships. Interestingly, Rear Admiral Clark was the commander of the Norfolk Naval Shipyard. Why is that of interest? Well, it was where the Philadelphia experiment had something happen. Why? Because in the legend of the teleported ship turned up on the Norfolk. Yeah, it was where the Philadelphia experiment ship went. Where the U.S. Eldridge ended up. Teleported ship turned up at the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, and although I don't buy into the wild tales of teleportation or time travel too, it was clear to me that someone was trying very hard to make a point. When back in 1980, in the early to mid-90s, I used the Freedom of Information Act to a significant degree. I was used to receive government, military, and intelligence-based documents through the mail. It's pretty good. Freedom to a significant degree, huh? I was used to receive government, military, and intelligence-based documents through the mail. But this was very different via, don't know what that. You would always get a photocopied material, and of course it would be delivered in a conventional fashion. On this occasion, though, I was the recipient of an original military document, plus it wasn't delivered by the mail or by UPS or FedEx. On occasion, someone had climbed the stairs to my apartment and had very quietly placed it right outside of my door in the dead of night. I conclude, knowing that I would soon find it also there, was not insignificant fact that the acknowledgement section of the microwave technique document referenced, well, 43, the year of the Philadelphia experiment. The report didn't mention the legendary experiment, but there was no doubt in my mind that it came from the old man on the phone 2 days earlier, or at the very least from an associate of his. After perusing the book for an hour or so, I went outside and scanned the apartment blocks. Everything was normal, as it ever was, or rather seemed to be. Beneath the veneer of normal, though, I detected a sense of something else, or dark machinations of an unclear unclear agenda. An unclear objective, huh? All right. So basically, we read more into this. Basically, they not only encountered shadow people, but they also encountered the MIB, or something very much like them. Basically, white bony people in black suits. That these guys, and they saw them for years. That we learned a new thing, that the sailors in this story, at least this version of it, saw the MIB for years afterwards. Basically, and that sounds very strange. So we could also say that the story of them being fused with it could also be true, and this could also be misinformation, but we don't know what the actual facts are. But it is all very interesting. Now, I looked into a bit more into this. I wanted to cover it a bit more. We could look at it a bit more like there. All right. Look at some more and stuff like that. Maybe I should try Vietnam and UFOs. Vietnam UFOs. Amazing accounts of alleged ex-UFO retrieval specialists. UFO disclosure from all right, Jimmy Carter. Welcome to Earth. Strange cases of human attacks on UFOs and aliens. Right. A bizarre UFO attack in the Korean War. I think that might be the one that was what happened. We can look at this one first too. We'll look more into it later on. So let's do this. Throughout the history of war, there have been many strange cases of bizarre. Then this is like the Mothman, or basically the Philadelphia experiment. These soldiers came upon, or like the rock apes. These soldiers encountered something very bizarre when they were at war. So we're going to be looking at this now, a very, very weird encounter. Throughout the history of war, there have been many strange cases of bizarre that have managed to slip through the cracks of time and be long lost among the countless tales of value or infinity. Those are the accounts that have not been brushed aside and forgotten, yet remain lodged there in the records for anyone who cares to dig for them. There are plenty of those reports that involve UFOs. And among these are the striking accounts that involve those mysterious crafts actually becoming active combat participants and engaging the men on the very ground. It is a topic we have covered in relation to the Vietnam War. It is also a puzzling indeed here how we will go back to the Korean War, to a case that has largely remained confined to the shadows of history, and which involved a whole regiment of men who have seemed to have come under attack by forces from beyond this world. Very bizarre accounts from the Korean War emerged in January 1987 when John Cameron, J. Allen Hynek, Center of UFO Studies, sat down for an interview with a former U.S. Army private, first class PFC, on the name of Mr. Francis P. Wall, who had a most unusual tale to tell. Wall had been deployed with the U.S. Army Infantry 27th Regiment, 2nd Battalion, Easy Company, in the May of 1951. They were operating outside the Chorwan in an area known by the military as the Iron Triangle, on a mission to reach a small village in the mountains. The village in question was an area marked to be bombarded with military artillery fire wiped off the face of the earth, and Wall and his men were there to make sure that any innocent civilians were properly warned of the impending rain of fire. Indeed, the air was already reverberating with the thumps of booms of shells hitting the dark of night, occasionally lit up with flashes in the distance. Wall and company had made their way to a steep slope overlooking the village, the fiery followers of artillery airbursts painting the scene with fire, and that was when they saw something they could not explain. They're in the air, in the middle of this war. Ravaged scene, Wall would say of this. Well, he would say this. Suddenly noticed on our right-hand side what appeared to be a jack-o'-lantern come wafting down across the mountain. And at first no one thought anything about it, so we noticed that this thing continued on down to the village, to where indeed the artillery airbursts were exploding. It had an orange glow in the beginning. We further noticed that this object was so quick that it could get into the center of an airburst of artillery and yet remain unharmed. But then this object approaches and then turned a blue-green brilliant light. It's hard to distinguish the size of it. There's no way to compare it. The light was pulsating. This object approached us. The men were understandably very unsettled by this point, as the object was obviously not one of theirs, nor any known aircraft any of them had ever seen before, and they radioed their situation to their superiors, requesting permission to open fire on it. Why they would think that their rifles would do any good when they had just witnessed it occasionally makes its way through the artillery explosions is anyone's guess, but the permission was granted, and Wall claims that he would then open fire on it with an M1 rifle loaded with armor-piercing bullets. He claims that he hit the object several times, hearing the pings of the bullets against what sounded like metal, and the bullets seemed to have an effect on it where the artillery had not apparently damaged it, causing it to exhibit some strange behavior, Wall would say. Nor now, why would that bullet damage this craft if the artillery rounds didn't? I don't know, unless they hadn't dropped their protective field around them or whatever. But the object went. Now, why would the bullet damage this craft? Yeah. On the rifle armor-piercing bullets, he claims that he hit the object several times, hearing the pings of the bullets against what sounded like metal, and the bullets seemed to have an effect on it where the artillery had not apparently damaged it. Yeah, causing it to exhibit some strange behavior. Well, Wall would say. Yeah. Why would it do that? Well, probably luck. I can say that technology like this, maybe no matter how advanced it is, can probably still be fallible. So maybe somehow the bullets found their mark and were able to damage the ship slightly. Yeah. Which sounds weird, doesn't it? Now, why would that bullet damage this craft if the artillery rounds didn't? I don't know, unless they had dropped their protective field around them or whatever. But the object went wild and the light was going on and off. It went off completely once briefly, and it was moving erratically from side to side as though it might crash onto the ground. Then a sound we had heard, no sound previous to this, the sound of like a diesel locomotive revving up. That's the way this thing sounded. This was where things get pretty harrowing, as according to Wall, the craft unleashed some sort of retaliatory attack. Yeah, I've heard of this story before. Sounds very weird, huh, folks? Apparently, the guy hit some of the soldiers with this retaliatory attack, and they were never the same again. They didn't die, but from then on, it felt like they noticed that their bodies were never exactly the same. Apparently, some guy could never basically get to the proper weight he was before, or something. The craft allegedly made a kind of ray or beam that came in pulses, which they could see aiming at them like a searchlight. That's very interesting. That's cool. I want to see this. By the way, folks, hit that like button if you have not. Let me do this over here real quick and make sure. Thank you for hitting that like button, folks. It really helps me fight the algorithm. All right. I kind of want to save this story for another video. Go over this and stuff. But I've been wanting to cover this story before. Apparently, as I've said before, men who were hit by this weird beam could never get back to their proper weight, or there's something that happened to them. Their bodies would not be exactly the same. They always felt different, like they'd somehow been altered somehow. And they feared it was some sort of retaliatory attack. They did shoot the thing. Shipping, after all, they actually damaged it, or at least made the ship go off balance. As I said, they were probably lucky. Maybe the field that protected the ship went down temporarily for some reason. but you can see it didn't really do all that good for them. Yeah. Made a kind of beam that came in pulses, which they could see aiming at them like a searchlight. When the ray swept over them, the men found themselves overcome with a tingling, burning sensation. And while it didn't seem to be causing any visible damage, they could feel it penetrating through their skin, and the pain was enough to make them scramble for cover, scurrying in a panic into their bunkers where the attack seemed to continue. Wall describes the terrifying otherworldly scene thusly. So the company commander, Lieutenant Evans, hauled us into our bunkers. We didn't know what was going to happen. We were scared. These are underground dugouts where you have deep holes to look out to fire at the enemy. So I'm in my bunker, and with another man, we're prepping out at this thing. It was hovered over us for a while, lit up the whole area with its light, and then I saw it shoot off at a 45-degree angle. That quick, just there and gone. That quick, it was as though that was the end of it. Unfortunately for Wall and others, it seemed to be far from the end of it. And for over the next few days, they would begin to develop an array of, well, a deliberating physical symptoms, including disorientation, memory loss, headaches, or stomach aches, nausea, and extreme weakness that was potent enough that some of them had trouble even walking. Doctors who examined them, they could find no reason or cause for these symptoms. The only evidence that anything was wrong being an unusually high white blood cell count that could not be explained. Despite nothing really officially wrong with them, the men were nevertheless all physically ill and suffering from something, and it was rarely assumed by them that this was the doing of the beam the UFO had fired at them. According to Wall, many of them continued to suffer from ill health for years. After the encounter with him, saying that even to that day he had frequent bouts of disorientation, memory loss, weakness, and difficulty putting on weight. Got it. Very weird, huh, folks? And just like with the Philadelphia experiment, with the sailors continuing to see the MIB, these men for years had to suffer from some weird things happening to them, didn't they? In later years, it has been speculated the men were, well, probably suffering from radiation sickness, but there have been plenty of other ideas by those who have heard this rather obscure case. One idea is that the Soviets or even the Chinese had been carrying out covert military experiments in the remote region. Listen, if they had that kind of technology, they would have been easily able to beat us. For God's sakes, look what they're testing by. If the Soviets or the Chinese had that kind of technology, we'd be dead by now. Testing anti-gravity technology and sonic weaponry. And indeed, this has been used as the explanation for many of the dozens of UFO sightings during the Korean War. Of course, there is also the notion that this encounter was exactly what it looks like, being attacked by an actual UFO, perhaps having been present in the region observing the combat for inscrutable reasons. It has even been suggested that the craft did not mean to launch a fatal attack, but to merely disorient and immobilize them. Hence, the fact that they did not suffer any severe injury or death. Then again, maybe this is all hallucinations. Well, maybe this is wrong. Result of trauma, tiredness, and stress from the war-torn environment. It could even just be a tall tale conjured by Wall himself, as he is the only official witness, and though he claims the 25 other men witnessed this event, none of the others seem to have ever been tracked around and independently interviewed. Just about the only thing known for sure is that he was indeed a soldier in the Korean War. The area specified on the date specified, but after that, no one knows. Although he swore on oath that the story is true, the end, we are really left to take the word of one witness. So it was just wartime hallucinations. Chinese experiments on an actual attack by an otherworldly UFO. It is quite likely we will never have an accurate, concrete answer. Yeah, it looks pretty good. We looked at that. It was fun. We covered the information there. Might have to cover other information as well. Maybe to the Vietnam War. Could look at that. I mean, wow. Those guys encountered some, yeah. Let's see, go over here. Mysterious engagements in the Vietnam War. This is the next story we could cover. But yeah, those guys encountered aliens or something very much like it. Or they could be they encountered a breakaway civilization, and for whatever reason, the field protecting the ship went down, and they were actually able to damage the ship, but it retaliated. It could be. It could be. But it's all very interesting as well. So what do you think, folks? What did these guys actually encounter? Because, well, from what I can say, it looks like maybe, well, definitely it looks like it was technological. Do you think it was maybe Sky Beast? Maybe they encountered one of those, and they were actually able, for some odd reason, to harm it, and then did retaliate. It doesn't sound like something like it's an animal, like maybe some alien animal and stuff like that. Not an intelligent life form, but maybe something that basically was curious and wanted to get closer to what was happening. It did black, but it does look like everything where I could see. It looks like it was technological, but then again, we don't know what an alien life form like this, how alien it could be. It could look like a ship to us, but it actually be an organic thing, and it retaliated using some weird energy weapon. Who knows? Should I go look at maybe Mothman again? Maybe I should do that. I could also do Ego Swan CI remote viewing experiments. We could cover some of that information. We could, couldn't we? Let me go over here. 40 minutes in, doing very good on this live stream. Having a lot of fun today. I mean, there are other stories I can cover. Truly bizarre accounts of San Diego Flight 513, the backyard experiment that sparked a UFO incident. Or I could look at the Mothman, the Point Pleasant Bridge disaster. Now, some people think that the Mothman had nothing to do with the bridge disaster. Yeah, that he was just showing up in that area for whatever reason, and the bridge just collapsed for another reason. But you gotta understand that a lot of people over in Chernobyl also saw a creature like that looked very much like the Mothman. So, and that was yet another disaster because it happened. People were encountering this bizarre bird creature that looked like the Mothman days before the Chernobyl disaster. So there's another thing where these creatures seem to basically hearken or basically are basically warning people about disasters that are happening. So it's all very new, very, very new. Or we could look at the conspiracy of Al Bielek and the Philadelphia experiment, but we could maybe. I mean, there are such other disasters as well, encounters with weird creatures. Let's go let's go to the Ego Swan CI remote viewing experiments. The talents of psychics or any other of the tags that are placed on those who can see beyond the limits of the majority of us, embraced by those some, are equally ridiculed by others. Perhaps it is surprising that many government agencies in the United States and elsewhere around the world would similarly be in the former category. The CIA took in particular interest in the abilities of people who claim to be able to leave their body and travel to destinations, mainly because they could use them as spies, hundreds, even thousands of miles away, completely undetected to boot. The possibilities for espionage were seemingly limitless with such weapons at their disposal. Very recently, at the same time as the mass attention to the Trump inauguration, as well as the fact of the Tic Tac UFO video. The CIA released a huge amount of data files, some of which spoke of such remote viewing programs, confirming what people in conspiracy circles have long suspected as fact. They really happened, and what's more, it seems they really worked. Before we look at some of those in more detail, check out the short video below. Ego Swan, as well as the CIA and many other intelligence agencies around the world, have investigated the possibilities of remote viewing. I'm basically reading this because I want to talk about the remote viewer who basically encountered aliens on the moon. Okay, that's what I want to cover here. But I figured this was a good way to look for it. Most notable is there's the former Soviet Union during the Cold War. One of the people initially employed by the United States to remote view and spy on the activities of Soviets was Ego Swan, who was regarded as one of the best in his field. He had repeatedly proven his skills, and his success rate in terms of key espionage information was very high. February 75. Swan was instructed to by a shadowy gentleman who worked out of Washington, D.C., that he would be required to work on a top-secret mission, and that a Mr. Axel would be contacting him very soon to instruct him further. Almost a month went by before the mysterious Mr. Axelrod made contact with Swan. It was a quick one-way conversation. He was told to meet Axelrod in the National Museum of Natural History. Once there, a man representing Mr. Axel, the guy greeted him before hustling him into a car. They were driven to an unknown destination where a helicopter stood waiting. Already feeling rattled, Swan's anxiety went up a little more when he was blindfolded once he was in the helicopter, which was the secrecy of their destination. When he finally arrived, still blindfolded, he was led to an elevator. The door slid shut and he could feel it descending. It seemed to be due for some time, suggesting to Swan that he was being led into one of the rumored underground bases said to be under the U.S. military's control. The elevator finally came to a stop, and Swan was led to a room where the blindfold was removed. In front of him, there stood Mr. Axelrod for a colony on the moon. Ooh. You're talking about the colony on the moon. Eh? Mr. Axelrod quickly introduced himself to Swan, whose mind was reeling with everything that happened since arriving at the museum that afternoon. He also volunteered that Axelrod was indeed a pseudonym, not his real identity. He began to grill Swan on the ins and outs of remote viewing and how he achieved his results. He also stated that he was prepared to offer him an extremely large amount of money for his services, as if need reminding the work would be a top-secret nature. Tentatively accepting the offer, not feeling as if he had much of a choice, Axelrod then began to ask Swan the extent of his knowledge regarding the moon. He then presented him the coordinates and asked him to remote view what was there. Apprehensively, Swan did so. He found himself leaving the Earth and heading towards the moon, the dark side of the moon. To be precise, he claimed he could see buildings and glass dome-like structures. His spiritual body entered the moon city. It was then that he noticed the living beings. He described what he was seeing to Axelrod, including that these beings appeared to notice his presence. This prompted Axelrod to bring the session to an immediate end, calling to Swan, urgently come away from there right now. Swan's extremely shaken by the experience, rushed back to his physical body, and after gathering himself, asked Axelrod what he had just seen. Was there really a colony on the moon? Axelrod remained quiet. Swan asked again, directly insinuating that the beings might not be human, to which Axelrod replied, "Isn't that something, huh?" Well, that was what I wanted to cover right there. Yeah, remote viewing and aliens. There's another thing, and this guy continues on. Other official records on remote viewing. Jupiter. 2 years previously, in 1973, Swan was involved in another CIA remote viewing experiment, one that took his astral consciousness to the planet Jupiter. At least according to the official records of the experiment, they also include the NSA, Stanford University in California. A detailed timeline of the experiment reproduced from official records showed that the season began at 6 p.m. It was 3 minutes before Swan indicated that he was there in front of the biggest planet in our solar system, Jupiter. Journey that it, well, at least seems to, at least in the astroform, taken only minutes. He made several interesting statements about the planet, including that the ring was present around the celestial body. That a ring was present around the celestial body when the Pioneer 10 probe completed its flyby mission shortly after Swan's claims, sending back its valuable data to NASA. Scientists, his statements was confirmed as absolute fact. Swan was extremely unlikely to have known this information without having seen it for himself with his own eyes, astral or otherwise. Not even the top scientists and astronomers of the day were aware of the ring around Jupiter. The Pioneer 10 flyby happened. Well, till the Pioneer 10 flyby happened. If Swan was right about the ring around Jupiter, that might he also have been correct when he claimed to have seen cities and buildings on the moon? And if he is correct about those, then does that imply that all those crazy whistleblowers who have claimed to have been to the cities may have also been telling the truth? CIA certainly appeared to have faith enough in Swan's abilities. The phenomenon of remote viewing in general to continue their sessions. 78 Project Stargate was initiated, presently the continuation of the experiments they had been conducting already. All right. Randy Kramer, more claims of secret space army. Of a secret space army. We have written about the secret space armies and their control of the U.S. military and financed by finance black budgets, including the presence of colonies and cities on the moon. As Swan stated, he saw various whistleblowers have come forward claiming to have been involved in such secret space projects. One of the strangest of these perhaps claims of Randy. 87, Kramer was 17 years old. He claims to have been awoken by the bright doorway that appeared to be a portal of some kind and suddenly opened in his bedroom. In the doorway stood two strange men, similar to the descriptions of the men in black. The men reached out to him, beckoning him to come with them. Confused and believing it to be an intense dream, Kramer rose from his bed and stepped into the bright portal-like door. Further claims that he and up to 50 other teenagers found themselves in a huge hangar in the center of the gigantic room with black triangular craft seemingly floating several feet from the ground. The group were told to enter the craft, which they did hail half in awe, half in fear of the bizarre and surreal experience. The next thing they knew, one of the military-type men stepped forward and asked them to direct their attention to above their heads. According to Kramer, the roof then transformed to a huge glass window, though they could see the earth. They were moving away from it and out into space. They were told to take a long look at the planet. Not only would they not see it for some time, but eventually they were about to undertake was to defend it. 20-year tour, Mars, huh? Kramer, he claimed that the group were then flown to the moon, where, like Swan had claimed to see remotely, they witnessed a huge city of tall buildings and glass domes. As if Kramer's account could not get any stranger, he then claimed they were transferred to a different spacecraft, where they left the moon and went further out into space. The next time they landed, they stepped from the ship and were greeted by a military person who announced matter-of-factly when he greeted them, "Welcome to Mars." Short, Kramer stated, he spent 20 years serving in a specialized off-planet military unit. He further claimed that he and others like him were specially selected to them being genetically equipped to withstand the mission. Following his 2-decade tour, Kramer asserts that he was returned to his bed back in 87 and was a teenager again. He had been age reversed and then sent back in time, though he remembered being brought back through the door portal. Only 50 minutes had passed on his bedside clock from when he had first left. He told himself that the experience, what very little he remembered, was simply a dream. According to Kramer, it was a decade or so before he could even begin to experience an unlocking of his repressed memories. Via below, memories. Mirror details, whistleblower cases. Whether Kramer's account of the experience is true to a degree is obviously up for discussion. Did make a report of his memories, MUFON, regarded as a very credible independent UFO research network? What is interesting is that some of the finer details mirror those of the alleged whistleblowers. We wrote recently of Al Bielek, his alleged involvement in the Philadelphia experiment. Part of his claims involved being age reversed and sent back indeed forward in time. Corey Goode has also made very similar claims. Carrying out missions like Kramer and described, including that he was sent to Mars and that he spent 20 years there before being sent back in time and age reversed. In fact, Michael Riff also claimed to have been involved in such projects, and what's more, they claimed they were happening far back as the 60s. Ralph claimed to have been spent 20 years on Mars after being recruited for the project in 76. He claimed his missions revolved around the building of 2 separate colonies on the Red Planet. Also, like Kramer and Goode, he stated that after 20 years service was complete, he was age reversed and his memories of the missions were suppressed. Basagio, on the other hand, claimed to have been fully aware of these projects, claiming that he, as well as colonies of Mars and the Moon, the time travel capabilities were even utilized for political advantage. To Dr. Basagio, he was shown images brought back from the future that showed him the carnage, Twin Towers, following the attacks. Towers, huh? Okay, that's very interesting right there. More encounters with bizarre creatures and stuff like that in the bizarre. Very interesting. Did these people encounter aliens or other creatures, mystical creatures? Who knows? It's all very, very interesting. I mean, is the government actually doing this sort of thing? Bianca the Zombie. Aloha, dude. Aloha, Bianca the Zombie. Thank you for coming into the Scumdog's Kennel. Now, we could also look at this story right here, but it might be too much. I mean, how long is this one right here? I might have to save that for another video. Yeah. But it's all very interesting and very fun. Mysterious and military engagements and mysterious, well, alien military engagements in the Vietnam War, or other such bizarre things. So we have that there. But this has all been a very fun video. Now, folks, maybe we should end this now. Let me go over here real quick. Let's see if you guys have hit that like button for me again. Ooh, thank you, folks. If you haven't, please hit the like button, folks. It really helps me fight the algorithm as well. Please go share this video on social media. Now, should I continue with this? With the Vietnam War and weird stuff? I mean, we already covered it with the rock apes, I think, like that. And this is a pretty long one right here. It might take a while. We can go over a bit of it. One aspect of the Vietnam War that has long slept under the radar, the mainstream consciousness, that amongst the fighting and violence, the conflict was absolutely rife with reports of strange things in the sky that defied conventional explanation. Even less known are still our numerous bizarre reports of actual confrontations between military forces and other forces that seem to have been, shall we say, not from around here. We're reading like something out of a science fiction story or alien invasion flick. These infighting frightening accounts of the violent encounters with UFOs during the Vietnam War suggest that it was not only the North Vietnamese forces that were the enemy, but also decidedly more otherworldly adversaries as well. That is cool. That is just interesting. And if we were to believe this, then yeah, aliens really do have a varied interest in our planet, and they love to basically, or rather, mess with people who are at war, or basically make it known to people that, well, no matter how advanced our weapons are, we're nothing compared to them. Because if you basically talk about the Battle of Los Angeles, when some weird thing was being fired at over Los Angeles, when we in the military ground below fired at it for well over an hour, but didn't do any damage to it before it just simply vanished. Basically, they're telling us that their technology is so far advanced that there's nothing we can do to stop them. Okay, that's very good. Maybe go a bit down here. By all accounts, it seems that troops in the Vietnam War were absolutely plagued by UFO activity, and some of the most spectacular reports of alien encounters during the Vietnam War have to do with other actual military engagements, UFOs. I might have to cover this in its own video, because this is a long article and stuff. So, do you think I should cover it? I can. But we had a good time tonight anyway, looking at various encounters with bizarre encounters and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's been a great talk here and having some fun tonight. Yeah. Should I look at this video, or should I look at it in it now? I kind of want to keep going forward. I can go over some of this information again tomorrow, but so maybe we'll read a bit more into this. By all accounts, it seems that troops in the Vietnam War, UFO activity, and some of the most spectacular reports of alien encounters during the Vietnam War have to do with actual military engagement with UFOs. One such incident allegedly occurred on June 15th, 1968, along the demilitarized zone between North and South Vietnam, where a patrol boat known as PCF-12, commanded by Lieutenant Pete Snyder, was on routine night patrol. Q Viet 12:30 a.m. They reportedly received a frantic distress call from another patrol boat in the vicinity, PCF, claiming that they were being attacked by unidentified lights. They were calling enemy helicopters, which seemed odd because the North Vietnamese enemy were not known to utilize combat helicopters at the time. Snyder ordered the PCF-12 to head to PCF-19's position. This is interesting. That is interesting. Other assistance, and they are, other offer assistance, and they, as they closed in, reported spotting in the sky two circular bright lights immersed in a strange glow, hovering over PCF's 19th position. As they approached one of the strange lights, it reportedly emitted a bright flash of of light, after which the PCF-19 exploded in a cascade of water and flying debris. Directly after destruction of the PCF-19, the two enigmatic lights were described as rapidly accelerating way towards the sea. PCF-12 scoured the area for any possible survivors of the carnage they had just witnessed. Two wounded men were found and recalled that the two UFOs had been trailing them for miles along the river. The survivors then claimed that they had decided to fire upon the threatening mysterious objects, and that was when one of them had issued a piercing blast of light to obliterate the boats. At first, it was thought by officials that the PCF-12 had been the victim of an enemy missile fired from shore, but later AP dispatched from Saigon would quote a military spokesman as having attributed the loss of PCF-19 to an unidentified object, not enemy coastal batteries or missiles. The PCF-12 continued its patrolling up to the river and were soon approached by the same two unidentified lights, which took up positions hovering on the port starboard sides around 300 yards away, 100 feet of the water. Well, PCF-12 called into the headquarters to try and get an idea of what they were dealing with, but were met with a response that there were no aircraft in the area. By the time realizing that these craft were not friendly, Snyder ordered his men to open fire on the lights, which apparently did little to phase even slow them down, and the PCF-12 began to retreat at full speed as the two mysterious aircraft trailed and stalked them, flickering in the night. The whole time, second engine man Jim Streffs would later claim that he got a good look at the craft and described them as having a surrounded front like an observation halo, and what looked like two crewmen sitting side by side. Strangely enough, no weapons could be seen mounted on the unidentified aircraft. PCF-12 nevertheless found itself being fired upon. Streffs remember seeing tracer rounds piercing up into the night from the nearby base point dome, with their targets being what he said were other far-off blinking circular lights whizzing about in the sky above. Eventually, a group of Phantom F-4 fighter jets arrived to converge upon and chase off the strange lights that were plaguing PCF-12 out to sea, leaving the crew to wonder what in hell just happened. At roughly the same time, another very strange engine was infiltrating the South China Sea. Okay, that was very interesting. I think I'll cover this Vietnam stuff in another video, maybe video and stuff like that. We can get back to this later on. But that was where I wanted to read a bit more of that. So yeah, in Vietnam as well, aliens are something very much weird. Or something very weird was encountered. So what do you think it was, folks? This has been great talking about this stuff. I mean, what is it that people encounter? These strange encounters with weird creatures and things that are beyond our world. What could they possibly be? Let's see here. By the way, folks, please go and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Read Comics They're Bad For You, as well as please go and make sure you're still subscribed. Remember that there's in my titles I'm spelled and stuff like that. Hit that like button for me because it helps me fight the algorithm so more people can see my stuff, as well as please go and please hit that bell for me and make sure you hit the thing on it that gives you all of my future notifications for my videos. Leave some comments down below. I'd love to hear from you guys, as well as share this video out on social media. Share it out on Twitter and Facebook. Also, please go and subscribe to Stitch Together Picks. Stitch Together Picks is a great YouTube channel. It's hosted by the Maniacal Cinephile. You're going to love his reviews of movies. They are great. All right, as well as go over to Creepy Little Book and subscribe to him too. Creepy Little Book is like the Art Bell radio show. He talks about aliens and ghosts. He releases small videos, but he also does live streams every night. So go and subscribe to Creepy Little Book. All right. Remember, folks, I'll be back. Also, go and subscribe to my Rumble channel. Go over to Rumble and search out Comic Freak. It'll take you to my Rumble channel. And please go and subscribe to it. As well as go over to BitChute and subscribe to my BitChute channel. Just go over to BitChute and search out Comic Freak. It'll take you to my channel. Also subscribe to that as well. Remember, folks, I'll be back again tomorrow around 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 7 or 8 for another live stream. So be sure to come back again then. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for